Today, myself and Will had the pleasure of picking the brains of one of combat sports' most innovative minds, Asim, aka President Awesome of Karate Combat. We touch on his grievances with one championship, the upcoming UFC Noche card, and how he's looking to bring Karate Combat to the next level. A brilliant conversation, and we hope you enjoy it.
So, Asim, of course, we spoke about it a little bit off air there, but we have a lot to dive into. And obviously, what I'm referring to here is ONE FC. So, I think the best way for me to start this is probably just to throw it over to you to sort of lay the table for a little bit of context with everything that's going on with yourself and with ONE FC at the moment.
Yeah, that's really important. People need to understand the context. And unfortunately, what goes viral are the really absurd comments, but the context is what's important. We need to educate people why this all began. So, honestly, man, I'm very new in this industry as president. I'm very young, and I don't want to step on anyone's toes. And I never had the drive to do that. So, I threw an event in Dubai. I wasn't hurting anybody. I invited local promoters, gave them tickets for free. I really tried to get involved in the community. And in this event in Dubai, we had a co-main event. We had karate versus Muay Thai. And the captain of Muay Thai was a guy named Y2K Fairtex, Fairtex is just such an unbelievable gym. So I wanted a big name to represent Muay Thai to do this like really awesome match where it's karate style versus style. About a week before the fight, Fairtex tells us that Chatri himself called the gym and said, if you allow this guy to fight for them, then I'm removing all opportunities from your gym. Now, this fighter was a free agent. This fighter was not signed to them. So, and what stinks is we gave the fighter an advance because he wasn't doing too well and he needed help to pay for training camp. So we paid the fighter early and he had to return the money. And the fighter was really sad about it. And the worst part is the fighter still hasn't fought. It's not like one championship said, okay, you can't fight there, you have to fight for us. No, the guy still hasn't fought. And what people don't understand is when fighters don't fight, especially up and coming fighters, man, they're living in the gym, they're microwaving meals, they're scrapping things by. It's not easy. They're doing personal training sessions to get by. They're bouncers in the weekends. Like, it's not an easy thing. They're doing Uber delivery while training. Like, the life is not easy. I have fighters that are garbage men, while training for big fights. Like, it's not easy. So when a promoter does that to a fighter, they don't understand the fighter. They don't understand what life is like for the fighter. And I'll tell you this, look, maybe it's because I'm naive, maybe it's because I'm young. If Chachi would have called me and personally said, look, Asim, it hurts my brand for you to let this guy fight. Please don't let him fight. I would have said, you know what? Okay, guarantee him an opportunity with your event and I'll pull him out. I don't want to hurt your event. I have no motivation to do that. I would have done that. But instead, Fairtex tells me that he goes there and is now allegedly banning us in the gym. And what I feel like we sort of got blackballed in one of the biggest Muay Thai gyms in the world, And that's where it all started. And then it just grew and snowballed sort of when all these one championship fighters were messaging me, trying to get out of their contracts. And obviously I can't help them. Once you're signed to one, you're stuck. I can't help with that. But then all the free agents, all the one fighters that sort of are free agents now, they all started signing towards us. And they all are complaining about what it was like over there. And even current one champions are complaining about what it's like. They're saying they rather retire from fighting than ever fight for them again. Like, these are crazy things to say. And what sucks about it is I'm the only one speaking out right now because I'm the only one that can do it. When you're signed to one, there's a defamation clause. You cannot say anything. So all these fighters can complain to me personally, but they can't come out and say anything. I'm trying to find a solution where I can get these guys to speak out because what's happening right now, what stinks, is some of the comments are saying, this guy just wants to be famous. This guy just wants to be popular. And it's like, guys, stop. Like, focus on the issues. There's people that haven't fought in 2 years, 3 years. There's guys that are fighting once every 4 years. Like, it's crazy stuff when you start researching this. There's fighters, I'm hearing from big-time managers that fighters are not getting paid what's on their contract. One of the biggest managers on the planet told me that one of his fighters signed for 50,000, 50,000, 50 to show, 50 to win. And that fight never came about. They kept his fighters starving and inactive. And the fighter got so desperate, it's like, I need a fight. And they're like, okay, we'll pay you 5-5. And then he fought for that type of money. This is according to one of the biggest managers on the planet. Now, I can't say the names because they can't come out they're scared to come out or they're worried to come out. This manager might come out because he's got big balls. This manager might come out one day. I hope he does, and you guys are going to be shocked by it. But little by little, I'm trying to give people the courage to speak out.
I definitely think one thing that stands out with your approach on this is anyone that knows your story, I'm sure we'll jump into it a little bit deeper later, is you have been on the mats with your fighters. You have been in the gym sleeping there, you and your wife paying for the meals for these fighters. And as you'll know, like you said, when these people don't get fights, I think it's a side that fans don't often see, or maybe it's just forgotten, is these people have rent to pay. These people can't pay for their food. Like, they really, really do need it. So I can see the sort of passion that comes with that. But just sort of skipping back to what you said, is there anything that you can actually, you're saying a lot of fighters are unhappy, but is there anything in particular? Of course, you mentioned there about the contracts, and that in itself is obviously quite a big thing. But is there anything in particular that they're not happy with other than just not getting fights?
Okay. I'll tell you this. So let's break it down this way. What the manager was saying for all his fighters that they're unhappy with is some of them are, yes, not getting paid what they were contracted to get paid. Some of these fighters are being treated so bad. I'm talking about Chatri himself. They're telling me that Chatri takes them to the side, screams at them so violently that these guys are crying and breaking down. And I have an audio recording of one of the most famous one championship fighters in history crying and pleading to their friend that he's being manipulated by the president of one championship. And he doesn't know how to get out, and he wishes he could get out. He wishes he could just say F you and leave, but he can't, and is claiming that, can I say the name of who he's talking about on the audio recording? Claims that Rodtang is feeling the same exact way. Claiming that Rodtang is crying, angry, and pissed off that Chatri, how he's treating him and how he screams at them. And I don't think I could let go of that recording. I don't think that's legal. But there's a lot of people out there that really want to leak it. You know, they messaged me saying they wanted me to leak it. I was like, no, I can't. If you want to do that thing, that's on you. I can't. I am rooting that someone has the courage to do it, because I know that nobody in the world has listened to this yet. And it'll just shock everybody, you know? And it sucks because I can't be the only one talking, or else I'm the bad guy to some of these people. You know what I mean? They think I'm making this up. So it's just, I'm getting a few fighters you're going to see this week. I have about like 4 or 5 fighters that will speak publicly that are out of their contracts. But the current champs, the biggest names, can't do it. And that's what sucks. So I'm like, I don't know what to do here, man.
Just to rewind a tiny bit, where the original issue stemmed from, as you mentioned about Fairtex Gym, why do you actually think that that was the case? Like you said, he wasn't in contract, he wasn't breaching any contractual obligations. So why do you actually think that originally started, from your perspective, of course?
Yep. I got you. I know. I truly believe this is the reason, and I verified this with multiple people. See, what's happening is one championship, very obviously, you look at all these articles, they're spending an absurd amount of money, like crazy amounts. I don't want to tell you a wrong number, but if you look through articles, I believe they spent well over $400 million in the last like 4 or 5 years, like absurd amount of money, like going negative, right? What's happening is this. They moved from doing their events in certain places to Thailand, because obviously it's going to be much cheaper, and they're getting these Thai fighters who are way cheaper than having these big names fight. That's why you're not seeing the big names anymore. This is my theory, at least. That's why you're not seeing these big names. I feel it's because he can't afford these paychecks, so he's bringing in these Thai fighters who are much cheaper, right? Now, here's the problem. If he allows me to invade into the Asian scene, right, and start getting these Thai fighters, now we're competing against each other. And now it becomes a bidding war. These Thai fighters are going to make more money, which is going to cost him more money in the end. So that's what I truly feel it is. I think it's very wrong. I don't think you should look at it like that at all. I would have been willing to break bread with the guy and get to know him. And I mean, again, he has far more experience than me, so maybe that's not beneficial for promoters to be friends. But I really didn't care. You know what I mean? And I feel like now you're blocking opportunities from Thai fighters that you're pretending to love. And I truly feel it's because you want to pay them as low as humanly possible.
Yeah, I think as we just sort of talk about, speaking of blocking opportunities and these sort of contracts which are restrictive in a lot of ways, I think there's something to be said about not just underpaying fighters specifically, because obviously that's always a big topic of conversation in mixed martial arts. It's pretty much prevalent 24/7, but not allowing guys to fight. I think there's something innately within that on the mental side of things. I think we see that a lot in the UFC. Alexander Volkanovski, after 294, he spoke about, struggling with not being able to fight, not being allowed to fight for specific reasons. And obviously this is a bit of a different example, but I think it just points to how deep this goes, like on a fundamental level in across mixed martial arts. Is there any sort of resolution you want to see, like for the better part, like across everything, specifically with different fighters or yourself?
What I'm trying to do, and I truly believe this is because not only I was a fighter, but because of my coaching. The way I coach my athletes is 100% with my full heart. Like, people don't understand, a lot of the fans that are watching me now, they don't understand what my past was like. My wife and I, we love our fighters. To find somebody that cares about other people the amount we do, it's very, very rare, especially in this sport. We love these guys. We treat them the best we possibly can, and we do everything for them to really set up their lives so they achieve their dreams. Like, it's insane, whether it's paying for attorney fees or visas and having guys stay in this country, meals and housing and training camps. It's insane. I can't imagine that even 0.5% of coaches do what we're doing right now. We have to be like 0.001. It's probably like, you'll see Khabib, you'll see us doing crazy things like this. Like, it's from our hearts. That sort of culture that we have, we bring that to the promoting. You know what I mean? Now, as a coach, I had my heart like that. As a promoter, I do too. I want these guys to do well. You'll see when fighters are competing, like, man, sometimes I'll tear up when it's really rough for them, or I'll just feel for them, man, and we'll connect. If you watch videos, me and all the fighters, we'll look each other in the eyes, we'll hug. There's a different energy between us just because I know what they're going through. I understand it. And most promoters don't. Most promoters never grew up in that life. I'm there side by side with these guys, and still till today, I'm coaching, high-level fighters. I'm cornering in the UFC this month, and I see what's happening. So that love, I want to bring that to the combat sports promoting world and sort of change the culture a little bit. And I want fighters to trust that I'm going to take care of them, and that's what's been happening, at least in karate combat. A lot of fighters truly trust me because they feel I get them.
Is there a trade-off with that? Because with what you've explained there on the other side, where you have this sort of management, or at least this president that is acting in a certain way, and of course, I know your background and I see how you treat your fighters and treat the people you work with. Is there a sticking point where that becomes quite difficult to do that? Whether you have to have hard conversations or you have to let people go. Have you encountered that yet? Or have you thought about that process, how you'll sort of cross that bridge when you come to it?
No, it's happened, it's happened a couple times. I'll tell you, like, one fighter was knocked out really badly. And I just don't feel like we should ever bring them back. For their own health, for their own benefit, and I advise them, you're an amazing coach. Start coaching, start moving on to the next stage of your life, things like that are really hard. But again, I'm doing that from my heart. I'm not saying, I don't want fighters to think like, oh, your dreams, I'm saying your dreams are impossible. It's not quite that. Like, I'm really trying to be real and look at these guys and tell them what the reality is, So that's happened a couple times where there's been some really bad knockouts, and I'm like, no, no more. Besides that, not really, not too many fighters upset yet. I've only been a promoter for like 9 months. I've been involved with karate combat. A lot of people think I created karate combat. It's not the case. I brought karate combat mainstream, but karate combat's been there for like 5 years now. Okay, we're really mainstream, right? I think we're ranked number 3 most searched and most viewed organization in the world right now, under one championship, under UFC. But no major problems. And when that does come, I want to make sure I resolve them morally and ethically, and take care of these guys how they deserve.
I want to dive into obviously karate combat a little bit more in a second, but like you said there, you're still very new to this, and no, you didn't create karate combat. It has been around for a little while now, and the context behind it, I think, is fantastic in regards to it basically being a couple of finance bros that love combat sports and just throw this money at it to try and create the best product possible. I really like the angle, but before we get into some of the X's and O's, just from your perspective, since coming into this new role, what does a day look like for you? Because you are here, there, and everywhere. You are president, you are coach, you are podcaster. I see you literally everywhere. So what does a day look like for you?
You know, I can't believe you asked that. Nobody's ever asked me that. Maybe Ariel Juani did a long time ago, but man, that's such a good question. So I have the same routine, and my wife laughs. I have the same routine every single day. And if it was my last day on earth, I would be doing the same damn thing, you know? I wake up bright and early, 6 a.m. I kiss my wife goodbye. I go to the same coffee shop every day. I go straight to the gym and I coach all my fighters. And I'm coaching usually from 8 a.m. till about 12 p.m. Okay. After that, about 4 hours of coaching, I start taking calls with Karate Combat nonstop because, again, I have to meet with my production team, my fight recruitment department, marketing, social media, like a lot of different teams. And I have to set up those calls. And then as well as outreach, right? I have to go ahead and call people now. We're doing an event in Singapore. We have to find out everything is good over there. So nonstop calls. And in between all of those calls, I'm trying to fit in a meal. I'm trying to fit in a workout. But essentially, if I were to make it simple for you, I coach 4 hours a day in the morning, and then I do Karate Combat till I'm exhausted at night, like nonstop,
On the mental side of things, how do you handle such a busy schedule? Because I feel like you're either born with it or you're not, right? That ability to just juggle so many different things at once. And I think obviously when you are a fight promoter, I think that just comes naturally. But is there any sort of, I don't want to say mantras or specific routines you do within that to, I suppose, sustain it, make it manageable?
Well, I'll tell you this. I'm being a full-time coach and full-time president of Karate Combat. It's almost virtually impossible. And it's really hard that I'm able to juggle this. A lot of, my role models that are a lot older than me, they keep telling me, they're like, yo, Asim, eventually you're just going to have to let this go. Like, you're going to have to let coaching go. But the issue is, I promised my fighters in the beginning of their careers that I die to see them successful. I can't lie to them. I can't let them go. You know what I mean? And I truly feel like I'll betray them if I do. Now, my life would be a lot simpler if I could just focus on Karate Combat. And I think I could do exponentially better. But I'm so loyal to these guys. I can't do it. I just can't. I can't let them go. So, just to put in perspective, I'm flying like 8 flights a month, 10 flights a month. Because you have to imagine every month I'm flying for Karate Combat, but I'm flying to coach. So if I'm flying to coach and I coach 2 fights only, that's still 4 flights plus the Karate Combat. That's another 6 plus wherever the hell else I have to go for podcasts and all of that. So definitely 8 to 10 flights a month, being a full-time coach and full-time president.
I think, and yeah, sorry,
go on, Leo, as you were.
Yeah. I was just saying, obviously, you spoke about your people saying you're gonna have to let it go, let coaching go, as if Karate Combat is growing exponentially, which I think pretty evidently, as you said, third most searched fight promotion, if I'm not mistaken. So obviously that does point to some success, and obviously was it only 9 months in the job for you specifically? It speaks for itself. Is there anything you'd say specifically is the reasoning, a business decision, creative decision that's been the driving factor behind like such short-term success?
Oh, wow. What a great question, man. So there's a lot to it. I would say, I told this to my fighters the other day, dealing with high pressure situations is a unique skill. And this can apply to anything you do in life, right? For a fighter, a high pressure situation would be competition day. So essentially, they're training their whole lives and then they're doing camp for maybe 2-3 months for one day, right? And in that one moment, whatever they do is going to count for everything. And that's a very high pressure situation. What I've realized in living my life this way, it's not just about can you perform in a high pressure situation. It's can you consistently perform under a high pressure situations over and over and over again. Because there's some people, look at this, for fighters, there's some people that will fight a big fight and take a long break. And I can guarantee you that those guys have a quicker downfall. Can you continuously get yourself in a high pressure situation every single day with no complaints and do it? And that's what my wife and I do. You know, my wife's an attorney. She's working on Karate Combat operational side, you know, so she does operations. I'm the president. Together, we are working from the second we wake up to the second we sleep. And unfortunately, she doesn't sleep at all. I sleep at least like 5 hours a day. She literally 2-3 days, no sleep, madness. But we're a team. That's what it is. So there's another thing.
That's the sacrifices.
Two main things, two important things I said. High pressure situations consistently over a period of time and finding a great team. I'm not alone here, you know, and it's not just me and my wife. We have a great production team, great social media team. Everyone is doing their jobs and working in harmony. So I think that's what you need.
You mentioned there about a team, and I follow quite a few of the guys that run the production. They also helped out, I believe, recently with the CJI, which was insane. That they put that together on 90 days was honestly insane. And we'll come back to that in a second because I do want to speak to you about that. But you mentioned there about your team and also your job. But I know the people in charge, they've said to you a couple of times, if you're not nearly getting fired, you're not thinking crazy enough. Right, which is a slogan that I absolutely love. So I'm a big fan of that first and foremost. But with your job, because I know you're someone that is constantly having ideas and constantly looking to evolve and grow and push into different spaces. When you said you go home and you work on Karate Combat till you're exhausted, is there one project? So, for example, Singapore, that you're just sitting down, is like, right, okay, let's get into all the details of Singapore. Or is your mind just going into different projects within Karate Combat? And if so, are there any that you can sort of maybe touch on?
Well, I guess it would be all of the above would be the answer, right? Because we throw an event every month. And by the way, that's why I really look up to the UFC, because they're throwing an event like every week.
Yeah.
So the team they have involved there, involved in UFC is just phenomenal, right? The fact that they can do that, because we're throwing events every month, and it's not easy. Because not only do you have to focus on Singapore, right? But then, for example, in Utah, which is our event after Singapore, we have to talk to commission, get all of that done. We have to go ahead and outsource different lighting, different stuff for production. We have to handle the venues. We have to make sure we educate Utah and Salt Lake City to buy tickets, right? While we're doing that for Singapore. So essentially, you're doing all that stuff. Plus, you know, we're supposed to go to Shanghai in November. So we're organizing our event in Shanghai, which, by the way, to organize an event in China is very, very difficult. So now we're organizing an event in Shanghai, and then we have Abu Dhabi in December. So it's just across the board, you're going to have to work on all these things simultaneously. And it really isn't easy. You know, as time passes, our team will grow and grow. And, you know, we'll be able to do events every week, you know, one day. And right now, though, it's definitely rough. Definitely.
I know you mentioned, first of all, the locations and the frequency is insane, because you mentioned there the UFC, and obviously we'll touch on Noche in a second, and they're obviously doing an incredible event this weekend. But the way that they sort of run things is a lot more copy and paste from between events. Incredible production, don't get me wrong, but there's a lot more of a standard infrastructure that they follow. I think the interesting thing that you guys do, which I can imagine just adds layers of headaches, is the fact that you are having a different world everywhere you're going, a completely different setup, completely different atmosphere, and a whole different climate. Some of the events that you've ran and the optics of that have been insane. But the thing that I wanted to sort of really get your thoughts on, because obviously we spoke about the growth of Karate Combat, and that is largely the product itself, because it is fantastic. But more so than that, I just want to rewind a little bit to where you really picked up your social media game, because obviously we're on a podcast, we talk about creators, especially in the MMA world. So this is something that always really caught my eye when I sort of saw your growth. What was the first time, whether it be personally or maybe within the business sense, that you realize, okay, I need to double down on the content, and this is going to be sort of the fast ticket, if you like, to the top, supplemented with obviously a good product?
Definitely. No, so, you know, what you're saying is very interesting, and it's because many old school coaches really hate that method. They hate social media, but
Mm.
instead of hating on it, they should understand this is the new generation, and I can
Mm.
use this as a tool, right, to do something really positive and something really great. So when I opened up Goat Shed, my MMA team in Miami, right away I got on social media, and I knew that nobody else was doing it. No other MMA coach was doing it. So I knew I was sort of first to the scene. And I knew I could take over very easily because no other coach wants to do it. So right away I started doing it, and I
Do
started being
what
so over the top.
exactly? Sorry
Oh, okay.
to cut in.
So I started posting consistently. I started posting things like not only technique videos. I started posting sparrings because that's like a very nobody
Taboo.
posts sparrings,
Yeah.
right? So I was like, sure, that means I'm gonna whatever no one's gonna do, I'm gonna do it. So I started posting sparrings, started posting technique videos, going on lives and sort of trying to make a persona because all these MMA or martial arts gyms, these old school martial arts gyms, they want you to stay quiet, you're humble, you bow, you wear a uniform, right? Everyone has the same haircut, everyone acts the same, talks the same, wears the same uniform. So I want to just go completely left field, and not do any of that. So we started being really loud, and I almost would be almost obnoxious with it. Like I wanted to just be absurd, so I got like a car sponsorship. Where I would get these luxury cars like Rolls Royces and Lamborghinis and everything. I parked a Lambo in my gym and would do content in front of it. I would pull up when I would corner my fighters. I would pull up in a Rolls Royce. We'd all step out. I'd have like red bottoms on and chains and watches. And at that time, or still, I have a lifelong friend that owns a wholesale jewelry exchange. So he would let me borrow, like $200,000 of chains, $100,000 watch, and then I would have to return it the next day. So nobody knew, like, I didn't have this money. I couldn't drive a Rolls Royce. I couldn't wear these chains. But I was just being so absurd to sort of disrupt the industry and start posting all of this content as an MMA coach and MMA team. And it worked beautifully. We hit the scene. Hey, a lot of people were angry locally. But the local gyms in Miami and Florida, they are pissed off. All the traditional martial arts, they were pissed off. But now it's gotten to the point like, I mean, what can you say now, right? Like in 5 years now, I'm president of this unbelievable company, the number 3 most viewed and watched company on the planet. There's something to be said about that. And then also all the good that came with it, right? Because through social media, we got the sponsorships. We became the most active team in Florida for like 4 or 5 years in a row. And because of all of that, fighters get to make more money. Fighters get to be more active. Their name gets to get out there. They get to become more popular. And now if you look on Tapology at our fighters, they're all like 10-0, 9-1, 8-1, 9-2, 13-1, like just absurd records. Our UFC record right now is 10-3 with 7 performance of the night bonuses. So over half our fights are performance of the night bonuses, win or lose. And then outside the UFC, I don't want to tell you a wrong number, but when I was a full-time coach, I'll tell you it was like 112 wins, 15 losses, which was a 90% win ratio. So it's just like, it's there. The success is there.
Yeah, I think there's Sorry, or do you mind?
Go for it.
Yeah. I just say you say about disruption. I think inherently that you have the word innovation. I think that links just perfectly together, right? I think a couple of years ago really was when the social media side of the MMA niche, I mean, I'm talking more specifically on YouTube, but more broadly speaking as well, really blew up for the first time on a personal front. So guys like MMA Guru, etc., really sort of charging and spearheading, this content creation game. And I think what you say about people thinking you're a little bit crazy and a little bit deluded, I always say, and me and Will speak about it all the time on here, that's kind of the mentality you have to have for success. And obviously looking ahead, now we're in a space where within MMA where content creation it's almost the norm now. So people are looking to you as a sort of inspiration. Where do you see that, and more specifically with Karate Combat in tandem, going in the next couple of years with social media and combining those two things together? Because obviously you're very much one for innovation in that regard.
So you guys are going to absolutely love this because Karate Combat right now is free on every platform. So we stream on X, on Twitter. We stream on Facebook. We're on YouTube. We're across every platform we humanly possibly can be. And I feel like that's the future. When you put a paywall behind something, it just pushes back a lot of the audience, and you lose a lot of those numbers. And also, usually the people willing to pay are a much older crowd. So if you look at, the viewership of anybody that's behind pay-per-view, it's usually in the late 30s, mid 40s. Okay. When you look at our viewership, everyone's in like their 20s. You know what? That's where it is because it's free everywhere, and our numbers are so ridiculous because it's free. So you'll look at Twitter, for example, our live stream on Twitter will have like, I don't know, like 24 million views, like something ridiculous. On Facebook, you'll have like 17 million views. So by the end, when you add it all together, we're at like 50 million views an event. It's absurd. And that's why we grew so fast, because it's free for everyone.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, because the barriers to entry is always the sticking point for a new fan of any sport. So if someone doesn't know what a sport is and they have some curiosity, if they have to go through to another platform and then pay a subscription, you're just giving too much friction. That's what I think you guys absolutely nailed. And then along with that, you created the long tail of the content. So on the back end of all the free content that you gave away, you then made great value off the back of it. It sort of leads us nicely into CJI, because one of the best things that they done, and one of the biggest selling points, of course, as you'll know, was the fact that there wasn't a paywall. It wasn't like ADCC for however many years. They chucked it on YouTube. They got full transparency to the metrics. They got to see how many concurrent viewers they had. I just wanted to get your sort of assessment on the overall event, because obviously you're a lifelong jiu-jitsu practitioner. You're someone, as Leo said, very innovative when it comes to social media, and of course someone that's also worked with Craig Jones within the pit. So you're the best person to ask for this, basically.
Yeah, you're right. The reason why I'm stressing about it is so basically Craig Jones competed for us a few times, and it was really, really great. And then this whole ADCC CGI thing came up, and Mo Jassim is somebody that I had a good relationship with as well. And there was a lot of rumors where I was the one funding CJI, and I was putting the money behind it. I was sort of the secret guy behind it. And then it was terrible because Henzo Gracie came out and is like, "Oh, I think I know who it is. It's a guy in Florida." I'm like, "No, God damn it. I know what you alluding to." Everyone, I don't know why. And everyone across social media was commenting that. So what ended up happening is, it ruffled some feathers. Mo Jassim was really upset because we have a history together, and he called me and was very upset about it. So I tried my best to stay neutral, and really not support anyone, essentially. Although I can say that CGI was an absolutely gorgeous event. I think it did a lot for the jiu-jitsu community,
Yeah,
absolutely, and it really put it on the map. Although they did all of that, I felt bad because Mo Jassim has been a figure for so long that's been attempting to do the same thing. And although they have different methods, I think they're both very important in the jiu-jitsu world. And that's my political statement for you.
Yeah, that was very
Smart
nicely down the middle. That's the first thing I'll say. And of course, I'll be clear about this as well. This isn't to take a side of one particular event. Of course, with CJR, what you have is a disruptor. So it's just intriguing from a business standpoint and a marketing standpoint, not just the product, but how they went along with the entire event, without obviously, like I said, without picking sides or anything like that. But just from your perspective, what do you think that CJI, done very well when it came to their marketing and their content? Because that's something that you both do fantastically well.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, so we have a lot of people in our social team, and we have a lot of new people, and constantly things are changing. Actually, the person running CGI's social media was our former social media manager, and he's a great guy, wonderful guy, and that's why I think you can see the content was so similar to Karate Combat, right? It was essentially like a Karate Combat grappling tournament with the amazing creativity of Craig Jones. You know what I mean? So it really was. I mean, I think they did a phenomenal job. I think that's sort of where jiu-jitsu is going to go, or where it should go. I think he sort of paved the path, and maybe now ADCC and other organizations can look at that and sort of, shift directions and go towards that path, because I think it was an unbelievable event. I've never watched a complete jiu-jitsu event, and I had my phone on their live feed the whole time. That was the first time I've ever done that. It was beautiful, and without a doubt, the pit is the future of grappling. There's no argument.
Oh my god!
Such a different dynamic, right?
Yeah, nothing else compares
Yeah.
to nonstop. We're getting hit up by all the jiu-jitsu organizations out there to use the pit and license it from us. And yeah, we want to do it, man. We're not going to hold it hostage. So we're going to see what we can do and help out the jiu-jitsu community. And I think it's the future.
I think it adds that different level as well. I saw, I think it was Nicky Rod talking about the different dynamics when they were preparing for CJI. They were training in the pit a good weeks or months before, and it was just, they were talking about how it was such a change in approach towards how they the stand-up game in particular with takedowns, and they found it a lot easier to sort of find the takedown by using the sort of slanted side of the pit. And I just think that's so interesting, and again points to disruption but also innovation. It's something new and it's something people want to see, which I think is like so necessary within jiu-jitsu. As you said, it's not really a sport people are engaged with on the competitive level. I can speak for myself as a practitioner. I'm not someone who even really loves to watch it as a sport. And I'm sure, I'm not going to assume, but I'm sure you and a lot of people probably share the same sentiment, right?
Yep.
So I think any progression towards, change and a different direction for the sport is 100% needed, as you said. And just as a question on a more, I guess more, I don't want to say selfish front, this is very low stakes here. But in terms of jiu-jitsu, because obviously I love talking about it, what is your favorite go-to submission that you can hit on anyone from any level, white belt to black belt? Hit me with it. I know, different change of pace, but I want to know.
That's a very good question. It would definitely be a Kimura.
Okay.
I've definitely this sounds terrible, but I would say I started jiu-jitsu when I was 10, and at 12 years old, I think I got great at the Kimura, and I probably broke more arms with the Kimura than any other submission I know. That doesn't say anything, it wasn't in the world championship level, but definitely Kimura is where it's at for me. I grappled a little bit, but my focus was more on the fighting aspect. I competed in grappling a little bit, but my focus was on the fighting aspect. So I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu under Hoist Gracie, and I trained under John Danner for a very long time. I was living with Gary Tonin in New York in the Blue Basement. And then, I fly to Texas now to meet with them. So I really feel like my team is, new wave, and those guys, mostly my loyalty lies within absolutely Gary Tonin and John Danner. I owe all my knowledge and my coaching ability, everything to John Danner and Gary Tonin. So I really appreciate them.
Obviously, two of probably the greatest minds in jiu-jitsu, right? And obviously there's so much you can take from them. Is there any advice, whether it's technique specific, mental game, on any front specifically within jiu-jitsu, that you could pass down to us and the listeners? Because for me, I train no-gi only, but I've been going on and off for about a year and a half. So I have so long to go, really, before I reach that top level. So is there anything that has carried you through all the decade plus long jiu-jitsu experience?
Yeah, right now. So I'll tell you this, man, jiu-jitsu wasn't evolving at a very quick rate when I was a kid. I would say when I was 10 years old, so I'm 34. So that was year 2000, something like that. So from year 2000 to 2010, it wasn't really evolving that much. The first 10 years I did jiu-jitsu. So if you knew the basic moves, that's what it was. And then as time passed, really John Danner just completely shook up the jiu-jitsu world, and everything was a mess. You know what I mean? All of a sudden, the Danner Death Squad came and started just submitting everybody. And since then, and now, they have the DVDs, the BJJ Fanatics, all that stuff. So now everyone's learning the systems and they're evolving their own systems. Now it's evolving at such an exponential rate. I would say my biggest advice, you have to study every freaking day. It can't just be in the gym. You can't just learn from your gym. That's not what it is anymore. You have to buy this freaking DVDs and watch it all the time. And it's super annoying because I'm trying to be a coach. I'm trying to be president. I have to watch these damn DVDs or else I'm outdated. Or else I'm completely outdated, man. Leg locks a year ago till today, or triangle systems, or back attacks. Everything is different. Nothing is the same. You know what I mean? It's just going so fast. So that's what I would say. My advice is invest in those instructionals, watch them often, and not only train, but study as well.
I think that's a good point that you brought up, because just in my opinion, not just in jiu-jitsu, but throughout mixed martial arts, I think why we're seeing that evolution now is like what you touched on, right? The access to information is just so rife. There are so many opportunities, whether it be for free or paid, to obtain information when you're not in the gym. So you're seeing a lot of evolution, not just in the sport itself, but like we spoke about with karate combat, which sort of just leads me to When I was looking at how fast it has grown and all of the changes that you've made, you now have elbows, which I am a massive proponent for.
I second that.
Yeah, this was really exciting news to me. When Karate Combat got elbows, I was honestly quite buzzing. When I saw the Karate Muay Thai crossovers and I knew there could be elbows, I got excited. But my question around that is, you sort of look not on a super strict time scale of 3 years or 5 years, but when you just look into the future, I know you constantly have an evolving image of Karate Combat, but what are sort of the main priorities that you would like to change or maybe evolve over the next few years with the company?
So I'll tell you this, as far as the rule set, now we've sort of solidified it. Because, okay, the president of the past, he had a phenomenal point fighting background. And the rules that he made, I felt was very incomplete, especially to become mainstream, because you can't really respect these athletes if there's no thigh kicks allowed, for instance. It's kind of like ridiculous. You know, like, are these the best strikers in the world? Probably not. You know what I mean? There's no way to compare that. And a lot of the rules I had to change. I had to do it so that way we gain the respect from the mainstream audience, you know? So in the end of the day, what I'm trying to create here is a complete striking realm. See, here's the issue with Muay Thai, for instance, right? And Muay Thai is adjusting, by the way. But, okay, you got the big gloves, and then there's a 10 count. These are the two things that are very unrealistic. Those big gloves you can use to shield, and it doesn't really make much sense. So a lot of the Muay Thai organizations are doing a great job. They're using the small gloves now, which is really, really amazing. And then with the ground and pound that we're adding, it removes the 10 count. And I'll tell you why that's important. Look, we love those Rocky moments, you know, where somebody drops, they get 10 seconds to recover and they come back and win. But it's not real. It's very hard to do that. When you get dropped, the guy can go ahead and finish you. So I wanted to create a striking rule set where submissions are illegal, holding is illegal, but all strikes are available. Everything. You can strike from every single position. So the guy falls, go ahead and go for the finish. You're standing, whatever it is. Now we got elbows and knees and kicks. And the rules are so simple now that I could describe it to any casual fan. Before, the rules were so complex to explain to a casual fan, they're going to be like, yo, dude, like, I don't want to watch this thing. Now it's so simple. Look, it's very simple. It's essentially Muay Thai with ground and pound. It's essentially MMA with no submissions. Very simple. That's simply put, right? All strikes are allowed. No submissions, no holding. Simple. And now you can visualize in your head what that looks like. And the action is insane. Insane because of it.
Yeah, I was listening and I was thinking MMA without submissions, Muay Thai with ground and pound, and I was thinking, yeah, that is a very simple and easy way to put it, because it's like what we touched on earlier. The more friction you give things, the harder it is to obtain that mainstream audience, like you said. And I think that's where, although it's sort of more smaller tweaks, it's not necessarily the big alien dancers and whatnot that you sometimes have. I definitely think that helps pull in that mainstream audience. So I was a really big fan of that. But
I'll tell you this.
Go for it. Go for it.
I'll tell you this, because a lot of traditional karate guys are upset at these rules. They're really, really angry. But not only does karate have elbows, and if you see the forms, karate has the ground and pound, all these things. So it's in karate. When a lot of the trolls will comment, like the old traditional karate guys are like, oh, this is just Muay Thai with ground and pound. And they think it's like a disrespectful comment, but listen to this. Muay Thai is just kickboxing with elbows. Karate Combat is just Muay Thai with ground and pound. UFC and MMA is just Karate Combat with submissions. You can say that for anything. It's like a dumb argument. Oh, boxing is kickboxing without kicks. You know, like it's just like dumb argument. And the karate rule set that we've created, all those techniques, they're in traditional karate. So we're still holding those values still. We're trying to create a complete striking system, like you said, that everyone can respect. And at the end of the day, in 2-3 years, they're going to say the greatest strikers on the planet are in Karate Combat, hands down.
One question I've got for you about the rule set, because this is something that I'm always intrigued by. And again, sorry to bring it back to CJI, but this is something that they've done as well. Open scoring. What do you think about that?
Wow. Okay. So listen to this, man. You know,
which way are you going to stand? Because I'm aggressively on this as well.
I'm so happy you mentioned this. So look, a lot of the things that CGI did, you got to remember Craig Jones competed for us a couple times. And then there's some people in the production team that works for Karate Combat that did CGI. That's why it looks so similar and all that stuff. These have been discussions for months in Karate Combat. So I'll tell you a couple of them. We've been talking about open scoring since January if we want to start, and we've been debating it. So it was really awesome that Craig Jones decided, okay, let's go ahead and do it. And now as a team, as a unit, we've all decided, great, we love it, and we're going to start it now in Singapore. So really, really happy about that. And then, thank you. And the second thing that CGI did that we've been discussing for a long time, now this is very controversial. If you notice, CGI during the Gabby Garcia match versus Craig Jones, they had Hinato Laranja, talking,
Larange.
and everyone in the audience could hear it, right? This has been a huge debate in Karate Combat. They've been talking about should the commentators be heard across the stadium. That way you could hear Bashruda and GSP when you're watching live. Now, I was very against it, but I'll tell you why. Yeah. You're not going to listen to your coach anymore. You're going to listen to GSP and Bashruda, and they're going to give away everything. Because think about it. If someone gets hurt and is hiding it, and GSP says, he's hurt, he didn't notice, it changes the whole fight.
So
it changes the whole fight.
I want to interject there because I've actually spoke about this exact same thing before, and you probably haven't. So I'm going to assume that you haven't been to a test match of cricket, right? Would I be right in assuming that?
No.
You do happen to have a Pakistan champion. Of course, the heritage of Pakistan is largely in cricket, so maybe there's a somewhat of a crossover. But the reason I say this is because if you go to a test match at cricket, or if you go to a tennis match, sometimes occasionally at Wimbledon, they'll have this. What they have is earpieces so that you can tune in to the commentary and you can hear the commentary as you're watching. And every time I go to a UFC event, I think, I am here for 7 hours. I am 400 foot away from these fights, and I'm just watching the fights. I have no commentary. Why is there no option for an earpiece? So you say there about having it broadcasted to everyone. I think a happy medium is everyone gets an earpiece, or you can buy an earpiece, depending on how you want to run it. And then you can tune into the commentary while still watching it. So you can sort of have that habit. What do you think about that?
My man, that's what I brought up in the meeting. That's exactly what I said.
Minds.
That's exactly what I said. Exactly what I said, man.
Love that.
And I love it. So, okay, the earpiece was my idea, and I brought it up in the meeting. Everyone did love it. I don't know if we're going to be able to do it for Singapore. I'll tell you this. The live commentary that they did at CGI that they tested, what we'll do is we have these influencer fighters. For those influencer fights, we'll go ahead and do the live commentary for everyone in the stadium.
Good idea.
For the Karate Combat fights, we won't. But I'm still trying to push that through the earpiece idea. I don't know if I'm going to have it in time for Singapore, but that's a major part of my goal. I love it. That's genius.
Yeah,
genius.
I love that you thought of that as well. I think as well, because you can even tie that into the visual, right? You see, I don't want to bring them up, but you see ONE FC, they do the wristbands, right? Where they do the glow-in-the-dark wristbands. You can even have a similar thing with the earpiece, so it just adds to the aesthetic as well, to be fair. But I just want to bring it back. It's not so much a question, but just one thing I want to point out, because I think it's important for people. Sometimes they hear open scoring. And for anyone that's maybe listening thinking, what is that? It's essentially you are presented with the score after every round. So going into the third, you know the score. Going into the fifth, you obviously know the score. I think the reason what is missed so much about this fight is we all think about this as fans, as current fans. But as you said, it's all about bringing this to the mainstream, and it's also bringing in new fans. And I think when someone typically turns on MMA or they turn on Karate Combat, for example, if you have never watched this before, it is quite literally just a ball of energy. You have no idea what's going on. So if you can at least have a very rigid score system where you know, okay, guy on left is 2 up, guy on right is 2 down, you can then get this very simplified approach where you can then root for someone if you just flick on this stream on YouTube, for example. So that's why I love that. So
I love it.
I'm really glad that you're going into that. And this is a little bit left field, Asim, but you're the perfect man to speak to this about. So I want to bring this up. You don't know where I'm going with this, do you?
No.
I'll best believe you're not going to be able to guess either. But you brought the Dana Brown energy when you first came on the scene, and I loved that. I said before we got on the recording, I thought that was a really, really cool angle, and then you blossomed into your own your own title and your own namesake. But the reason I say that is because the way that Dana feels about Power Slap is how I have recently been overcome by toe wrestling. Have you
Yeah.
ever heard of
I
this
had the same
sport?
reaction.
Is my question.
Toe wrestling.
Toe wrestling.
Wow. I don't even know what that would look like.
Well, let me tell you, and I let me tell you. I just want to get your thoughts on it. This is why I'm bringing this up. So, long story short, I have a couple of friends. They run a production company, a good production company in London. They work with a lot of high brands and whatnot. Fantastically talented. At heart, they're just a bunch of indie filmmakers, essentially. But they have bought a year or so ago. They bought the rights to the entire sport of toe wrestling. Now, I just laughed at this originally when I heard about it because I thought, oh, okay, it's a bit gimmicky and whatnot. And then I started to look at it. I started to get invested. And then I started to realize that it was actually quite big in different pockets around the world, in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in China, in England, where it was born. And it's essentially arm wrestling with the toes, as bizarre as that may sound. So I thought that it was somewhat jokey until I went there and then saw how seriously these people take it.
You watched it live?
I went to the event. I went to the World Championships. I went.
Yeah.
I had to go down there. I went and worked the event. I said, "Sign me up. I'll be there. Of course I will." I cover combat sports, so this is enough of. It's got wrestling in the name. I mean, this is enough for me. So anyway, I go there and I realize how much of a serious sport this is, how much technique is involved, how much time people give this. One of the champions has surgically removed his toenails so that he has more leverage in his bouts. Like, this is the extent that people are going to, right? There's one guy there, he's a 17-time world champion. So what I'm really roundabout asking is, the first year there were 10 people there. No one really knew it. The second year, there's a few hundred people there, and the prize fund's gone from nothing to £500. Next year, likely to be around £5,000. So it's going to just keep increasing. And what CJI has shown us is, if you put up a big enough prize money, people will turn up and people will also watch. So
Yes.
my sort of question around this, really, other than trying to sell you on toe wrestling, is, as someone who took a sport which, of course, it already had an infrastructure and it already had an attention to some extent, but you gave it this exponential shot in the arm, if you like. What were the main foundations to that? If I look at this sport of toe wrestling now, because I see the potential in the actual development of the sport, I see the potential in the content more specifically, and I see people's reactions to it. It just garners like a bit of intrigue. Like, what's toe wrestling? And people sort of turn their head. So my sort of question to you is, if you were to look at that, what would you look to sort of do with the content, maybe, or even a strategy just to give it a boost?
Well, I'll tell you this, like, right away I'm thinking, how are these guys training? How do you train for this? I mean, I'd be very curious. So I think that's in itself, like, what does a training camp look like for a toe wrestler? These types of things would be very intriguing.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I would love to see like a UFC embedded, but for toe wrestling. That would be what's fight week look like? This is all really intriguing. I just can't imagine. How come I haven't seen this yet? I don't understand.
Because this is the beauty of it, right? This sport has been around for 30 years. But like what you said with MMA coaches, I know this is different. I'm not saying toe wrestling is MMA. I'm not saying that. But what I am saying is the principles are the same. The same way that MMA coaches traditionally never use social media and they don't really know how to create content. Exact same thing with this sport. No one's ever made any documentation on it. So people have just been toe wrestling in world championships around the world, but no one's really ever documented what that is. So no one knows about it. So the sport is 30 plus years old, but no one knows. This is the whole beauty of it. Like, I go this year and there's a few hundred people, and I'm thinking next year there's going to be thousands, because you're starting to get people who understand content and attention, and they're starting to put their time and attention. So that's why you don't know about it. No one's been talking about it, essentially, but there's been no content for the last half a decade, basically.
Get ahead of the curve.
Dude, they need an influencer toe wrestling match.
100%.
Dude, if they got 2 streamers two really big streamers, right? To do toe wrestling would blow up. There's no way it wouldn't blow up. I've never heard this before. That's really cool, man.
Yeah, I honestly,
You starting
sorry, go on.
if you start putting content out of it, I mean, I can't imagine that people wouldn't. Obviously, there's gonna be some trolls that are really angry about it, but I think it'll catch. I mean, it'll be shared everywhere. I can't imagine that everyone won't share it. I mean, it's hilarious.
Well, the thing which is even funnier about it is you start understanding different levels of this sport, and obviously it's toe wrestling, so it is like arm wrestling of the feet. But it also, I didn't realize this until I actually went to the event, but it incorporates somewhat of like professional wrestling. So a lot of the people that turn up have a persona. Some have outfits. This guy rocks up in a massive top hat with like a Union Jack. He's a 17-time world champion, and he's called Nasty Nash. And you've got Total Destruction. He's undefeated in 3 years. And these guys are like leaning into pro wrestling, but then also doing it with toe wrestling as the actual sport. And honestly, it's very fascinating. So yeah, I appreciate the concept of the influence of. I know this is so random, but I just wanted to get your thoughts on it.
I think it's great, man. I think it's very. I mean, I'm curious. I'm going to definitely research it. So
for sure.
Well, I think inherently. Sorry.
No, all I was going to say is I'll make a promise to you that this week I've even got on my to-do list. I've got a bunch of content from the World Championship, so I'm going to be pumping that out this week. So keep your eyes tuned for toe wrestling at Casuals Corner. Asim, I've got you.
I like it.
Yeah, I think inherently that comes from the interest in the unknown. I think that goes for anything in combat sports. Really, karate combat has that appeal, being different, of being new, and that's probably why it's so successful in a lot of ways. And bit of a sort of shift here, because I know you're a busy man. We just want to round off with a couple of questions. When I talk about intrigue, the Sphere card pretty much embodies that. It's something we haven't seen within MMA and the UFC specifically. So obviously there's a lot of buzz and interest around that. If I had to give you your 2 cents on any matchups there on the card that you like, the main event in particular, for example, Sean O'Malley, of course, spearheading that. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, there's a lot to say. First of all, just with the show in general. So Karate Combat, we try to make it look like each event is a different level of a video game. Imagine Mortal Kombat or Tekken. Each level up is a different virtual background, right? And that's what we have. If you watch our events, every event is this different virtual background, and it's really, really cool. We sort of create these different worlds. Now they have the opportunity, UFC has the opportunity to kind of do something similar, but really next scale, right? Because it's this 360 sphere. I mean, the experience is going to be unbelievable. I'm a huge fan of Dana. I know a lot of people hate on him, but you need role models. You need somebody to look up to. And for me, he's the greatest promoter ever. And he's one of the most successful ones. And I look at him and I try to learn, and I think he's throwing the greatest event ever. I thought it was really interesting that it was on Mexican Independence Day. That was really cool. And it's really smart because one thing about Mexican culture, if you guys know this, Mexicans fight hard. Like any fighter knows, if you're going to fight a Mexican, it's going to be hard to finish him, hard to knock him out. It's going to be a war. You have to get ready for a war. Your heart's going to be tested. So often the more technical fighter may lose because they didn't have that aggression, that heart that Mexican fighter brought. I don't know what it is about that culture that is able to generate that. My Mexican fighters are some of the most savage fighters I have. They are absolute animals. So it was such a smart decision. Like, you have guaranteed great fights because you have a bunch of these Mexican fighters on the card that really want to represent on their day. It means something to them, right? And you're lining them up perfectly. The matchups are great. The main event, Murab, he's Mexican at heart, apparently.
Mexican Murab.
Sean O'Malley, and it's just, I'm a huge fan of both. Murab's been to my gym before. We talk often. I'm actually signing a couple of his teammates to fight for Karate Combat. I really like the dude. I'm a big fan of Sean O'Malley also. I love his swag. I love how, he's just having fun with it, He just looks like a fun dude. I've never met him, but I really like his character. So I don't know. It's going to be a phenomenal fight. But I think you sort of have that classic matchup where you have that guy, Murab, who's bringing that Mexican mentality, at least, where he's going to grind, right? He's going to go, he's a machine. And he's going to go against, a technical master, precision. And we get to really see how that's going to work out. Can Murab just grind this guy get him exhausted, make him sloppy, and take away that technique? Or will Sean O'Malley be so precise that he can just dictate the pace of it and control everything, you know?
If we had to press you for a prediction, come on, Asim.
Yeah,
Let's not
we
sit on the
gotta have it.
fence. Let's not sit on the fence. Where are we going with this one?
No political answer. We need.
I am a tremendous fan of both athletes. So please, both of them, you know, they've been to Karate Combat, by the way. Both of them, please don't get offended. This is just, you know, statistical prediction from me as a coach. I think Merab takes it. I think that grind is going to be a lot, and it's going to be hard to stop, you know? But, you know, it could go either way, and I would not put my money anywhere.
Well,
you know?
That's a perfect place to round up. And talking about hard to stop, that has most certainly been your mantra for quite a long time since you've entered this scene, to be honest. You have been very hard to stop. It's been cool to see the growth of not only your own brand, but Karate Combat as well, and what you're doing with that.
Absolutely.
And the whole team around it as well. I know, obviously, we've been speaking to you today, but I personally follow quite a few of the production team and a few of the guys around Karate Combat and people at Goat Shed and whatnot. And the sort of network effect that you're putting together is just good energy into the scene. So it's also cool to see from that perspective as well. But Asim, it's been an absolute pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for your time, and we wish you all the best with the upcoming events as well.
Thank you, guys. Please watch Singapore, September 18th. And I'd love to have you guys on a show, by the way, one day. I don't know where
100%.
you're based out of, but we'll talk later.
We're both London-based, so
I would love to get you guys over for a show. So we'll talk about that later.
100%.
Perfect.
All in for it.
Last one just before you go? Where can people find you?
Oh, okay. You know, on Instagram, president.awesome, and then we have at Karate Combat on X as well. It's at Karate Combat, Prez Awesome on X. You know, follow us. We take into big consideration what the community wants to see. So, you know, on our app, people can vote on what they want to see from us. So the more fan interaction, you know, we can hear, the more we can adjust and move in the right direction for the fans. So would love to hear everyone's thoughts.
Perfect.
Sounds good. Thank you, mate. This has been the MMA Creators Podcast episode. I believe it's number 67 now. And we will see you next Sunday. Have a good one.